You ever look at something like crypto and just think, nope, that is way too complicated, way too risky for me? Well, we're about to walk through a story that starts exactly there, in that place of fear. And it ends with one single, simple action. It's a journey I think a lot of us can probably relate to. And this is really the idea at the heart of the whole thing. This feeling that maybe, just maybe, the average person is kept a little bit scared of the things that could actually make them some real money. It's a powerful thought. Kind of makes you wonder, right? And this feeling, it's not new. I mean, think about it. Our parents or maybe our grandparents, they probably felt the exact same way about the stock market. And now, well, that same cloud of fear is hanging right over the crypto market. And the person in this story, he admits he was right in the middle of it. But then, as Bitcoin's price started to really take off, something clicked. He realized just being afraid wasn't a strategy. It wasn't getting him anywhere. So it was time to tune out all that noise and go find someone who actually knew what they were talking about. And that's when he found a mentor. So, this mentor he found had a really interesting point of view. See, he'd been quietly doing a Bitcoin SIP, a systematic investment plan, since way back in 2021. That's when one Bitcoin was only worth around $17,000. So this guy wasn't just talking theory, He was actually living this strategy. So naturally, this brought up the elephant in the room, especially if you're investing in a place like India. He asked, look, with this massive 30% tax on profits and all these strict rules, what's even the point? Why would anyone bother? And the mentor's answer was so simple, but wow, it was powerful. He just said, first of all, the tax is on profits. You only pay when you sell. I'm not planning on selling for at least 5, maybe 7 years. So why am I going to worry about a tax bill today? And right there, that's his whole game plan. He's not investing for next week. He's investing for his daughter's future years and years down the line. He's making a bet that by the time he's actually ready to sell, the government regulations might be a little more friendly. But hey, even if they're not, if Bitcoin's value truly skyrockets, paying that tax is still going to feel like a massive win. Okay, but that leads to the next big question, doesn't it? The mentor threw out this idea that one day a single Bitcoin could be worth 10 crore rupees. That's over $1 million. It sounds absolutely insane. So our narrator had to ask him, okay, how? How is that even possible? So the mentor said, all right, to understand the future, let's just look at the past for a second. Back in 2014, one Bitcoin was about 30,000 rupees. Fast forward to today, in 2025, and it's blown past 1 crore. When you see it like that, suddenly that 2030 prediction doesn't sound quite so crazy, does it? And look, the logic here isn't just some fantasy. It's actually based on a really basic economic idea: limited supply. There are only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin, period. So as more and more people want a piece of that very small, finite pie, well, the price just naturally has to go up. And then the mentor just laid it out there, a real truth bomb. He said, right now, today, an average person can still afford to buy a tiny little piece of a Bitcoin. But in the future, the common person might not be able to afford it at all. It really makes you feel like the clock is ticking, So this was all starting to make sense. But there was still this one giant wall in the way. The narrator, just like pretty much all of us, thought you needed a ton of cash just to get your foot in the door. He basically felt like he was priced out before he could even begin. He just told his mentor straight up, this all sounds amazing, but I don't have that kind of money. And that's the thought that just stops so many people in their tracks, isn't it? But what the mentor said next changed everything. He just asked him, do you have 500 rupees? We're talking less than $7. And with that one simple question, that whole giant barrier just came crashing down. You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can start with just a tiny fraction. And that was it. That was the aha moment. Just hearing how low the barrier to entry really was, that was the final push he needed. His whole perspective shifted. He immediately went, opened an account on an exchange, and started his own SIP. The fear was gone, and it was replaced by action. And this right here is the biggest takeaway from this whole story. This wasn't some reckless, all-in gamble. No, it was a small, totally calculated risk that he was able to take because he had new information. I mean, the logic is pretty hard to argue with, right? The amount you need to start is tiny, so what you stand to lose is minimal. but the potential upside, it's enormous. And then you have to think about the risk of future regret, that nagging what if that could stick with you for years. Plus, choosing a platform that's registered and compliant with government financial rules, well, that just makes the decision even easier. And that really brings us to the final question that our narrator was left with. And it's a question for all of us, really. What if he's right? What if all this turns out to be true? What if Bitcoin really does hit those unbelievable numbers and we're just sitting on the sidelines because we were too afraid to even try? It's definitely something to think about.